All right. So last time we managed to get all of the morphemes selected out of all the words in the first verse of Obadiah. Um, One of the things that some people are going to notice and they're going to comment about is there is only one chapter in Obadiah. And the software, the coding that I have here is robust enough that if you want to just put verse numbers on books that only have one chapter, you can do that. But I have my reasons for wanting to do it the way I'm doing. I'm not going to tell you what those are. They have to do with other projects that I'm going to use this in the future, and I need to be able to access things consistently across different books. But um, if you don't have that constraint and you prefer it the other way, you can do that with your own translation. Um, and I wanted to take a minute to slow down and talk about um, why I have these set up the way I do. Uh, in particular, in Hebrew, a lot of words get combined together, and there's a lot of prefixes and a lot of suffixes that carry a lot of meaning. It's what they call a synthetic language. Uh, if you just had, a couple of months of Hebrew, the most obvious one that you're going to think of is the definite article is just a word or just a letter that gets attached to the beginning of the word. Um, it's the tree, or it's is tree, it's is the tree. So it's not super. It's something that'll be less common in Greek than in Hebrew, but in Hebrew, I wanted to be able to pull everything apart, and I wanted to be able to examine each part individually. As far as I'm aware, every language has some of this. There's no language I'm aware of that does not have some synthetic components. Even English, we have a bunch of prefixes that we throw around, that we attach and detach, and some suffixes that we throw around and attach and detach. My grandmother's favorite suffix was ish. Uh, we'll be there noon-ish. We'll, you know, it's not really food, but it's food-ish. She would add ish to pretty much anything, and being able to separate that out when you're translating and say, okay, ish means kind of sort of maybe ish, um, and then translate it separately, and then later there are ways to recombine that in the software, and we'll get into that at some point, I'm sure, not on this verse. um, so we've got everything separated out. We did that in the base file. We have the word and then the morphemes that it can get separated out into. So then in our book file, we'll come over and we'll go to the translation tab. And the first thing we do is we put the verse reference, and then every morpheme in the verse gets an index number according to where it appears. And so we're going to add one. I'm going to add, oh, I'm going to add 20 rows just for a minute. And we'll uh, stretch this down until we've got everything pulled in, which is going to be more than 20. Let's add another 20. It's not so bad if we have to delete them. There we go. And we run out right there. Just because the software has a bunch of extra code in it to make sure everything works, there's no reason to keep extra lines that you're not going to use. It's fine to do it. It's also fine to not do it. If you leave those ones, it'll run a little bit slower and it'll get a little confusing, but it won't be so much that you really notice. Um, so every word here has the morpheme, and then it tells you the word that it's a part of. And so, in particular, if we get down here to index 7, you'll see that that's just the lamed. And then the word that it's part of is edom. And then down here, index 14, we've got the vav and vazir. And so uh, that's how that all gets laid out. The thing that you are translating is the morpheme, and you want to know what the word is. Also over here in column M, we have the text laid out in the order that it appears, without things separated out, so that you can just look at what's there without having to go to the other tab. I'm going to show you how we can change the order over here in just a few minutes. Um, like I said, we are going the easy way. We are not challenging uh, how things are translated. That's not the purpose of this particular exercise. The purpose is just so that I can show people how you can get things translating. So we're going to come over to Blue Letter Bible, and you know, somebody's going to tell you don't use Strong's because Strong's is old, and I am going to echo their sentiment. When you're actually making a really serious translation, don't use Strong's because Strong's is really old. And sometimes he had his own agenda. And it's far better to use newer resources. It's far better to use a wide variety of resources. But that's not what we're doing here today. That's not the exercise today. So today we are going to use Strong's. We're going to go, it's actually more than just Strong's, it's all the Blue Letter uh, resources. So there's going to be uh, a bunch of things. You know, we've got Genesis, Hebrew, Kelly, lexicon. We've got all the different places where the word shows up. And when we have a word that's a little more controversial than this one, where we're possibly concerned about a false friend, then we're going to get into all the different things that it might say. But we're not worried about that today. Today, what we have is we have Hazon, and we're going to come over to our dictionary file, and we are going to grab our first morpheme, Hazon, and we are going to add it here, and it'll automatically populate. If we end up, sometimes you will end up with the same spelling can have multiple meanings, and that's why this will automatically populate an entry number. Uh, the entry number for most things, most of the time, is going to be 1 because most things don't have a homonym that's spelled exactly the same. When that does happen, you'll get a 2, and then you've got to be a little more careful. And we're in particular going to talk about some of the verb forms later, but that doesn't come up today. I'm just letting the people who know that I know that they know that I know. And so for this morpheme, we need the root, which is the base form of the word. So, for example, in English, the base form would be car, and sometimes you add an S to say cars, and sometimes you add an apostrophe S to say cars, and sometimes you add an S apostrophe to say cars. It's confusing, if you don't speak English. And similarly, here in Hebrew, the text is going to be small enough that you can't really see it. Um, but the morpheme is a little bit different. Um, the morpheme has a chetef version of the vowel, and the root has a full version of the vowel. And the reason is this morpheme is the construct version. Now, not every Hebrew word spells the construct version different, and we're going to talk about how that can and can't make things a little more complicated later. Um, we're always going to guess that the root form that we're using is one. Again, there are going to be words that are spelled the same, that where the root is spelled the same, but it has different grammar rules. One of my favorite examples of this is the word ion. Um, uh, in the feminine form, ion means I, the that thing, um, and it follows the feminine grammatical rules. A lot of times, eyes occur in pairs. I don't know if you've noticed that. I had. It was not news when I read it in my Hebrew book, but apparently some people, this is a shock, that eyes usually occur in pairs. Um, and So the dual form and the masculine plural form are very, very similar. But if you have just like a whole bunch of eyes that you're talking about, just talking about all the eyes in the room, then it's ionote. Um, But in the masculine form, ion means a spring, like that water comes out of, uh, like a fountain. Um, and then the plural form, if you've got a whole bunch of springs to talk about, is ionim. And so sometimes, if all you're talking about is one ion, like in a psalm or something, it's not entirely clear whether they mean an eye or a spring, and that's sometimes why you'll see the difference in some translations. Um, but that would be a case where we would have two different root entries for something spelled exactly the same, because we're going to treat them grammatically different. But also, when we enter the one, we see that there is nothing in the dictionary because it comes up with an A. And we know that because this was the first word, but, you know, just for future. So we are going to grab our root. We're going to come to our dictionary, and we'll add that here. Part of speech, how you decide to do this is entirely up to you. It does not import into other parts of the spreadsheets that I have in any way that is particularly interesting. But you do uh, you do want to be consistent so that your users can use it, can understand it. And so what I am going to do is I am going to fully write out noun and just leave it at that because this is just a regular noun. Um, let's see. Forms and dictionary entry. Dictionary entry, we are going to cheat. We are going to use the Strong's dictionary entry. Why? Because we're lazy. No, because like I said, we're not trying to do something super spectacular with this one. We are just trying to make a version that we can. We're just trying to. We're just trying to bring this information in so that you know how to make the translation. How you make your dictionary entry is going to be something largely up to you. Let's see. Where do I add definitions again? Oh, here we go. So from here, we are going to create the different forms of the um, the word. So this word is vision, but there are different forms of the word vision in English. There is visions, and visions. Um, and any of these may be used at some point. Before we go too far, we are going to make sure that this is the only real translation that matters. We're going to walk through, we're going to go vision, vision, vision. Now, because we are trying to match the King James as much as possible, we really can, in our case, just scroll down and say, is there any place where it means anything other than vision? And no, it doesn't look like there is. We can also see, outline of biblical usage. Sometimes these are not always 100%. So I do often recommend that you do the scroll down and see what you see, because you will sometimes see, you'll see, the outline of biblical usage only has vision, and then you'll scroll through and there'll be one time where it's translated dream or something like that. And yeah, and then up here again, translation count 35, and every single time it is rendered as vision. Kind of looks like it only appears in a singular form too, but that'll be something to be aware of but not really care about in terms of as we're translating. um, very soon we are going to have an opportunity to do something more. If we get that far by the end of the video, then I'm gonna go on and create a utility for doing this. I have a utility for doing it in modern English, but it occurred to me just this very moment that I don't have a utility for doing this in Elizabethan English. You'll see that it grabs the gloss as vision. And when we come here, we need to say, what is the form of speech? And you'll see there's nothing here. That's because we haven't filled out any of the speeches. This is a case where somebody has to make a decision. Somebody has to decide uh, what they want to do. Um, and I am making two separate decisions and seeing which one I like better as I go. In the open source translation, I went through and I made a list of every different possible kind of speech form in Hebrew and Greek. And at some point, I'm going to do it for Aramaic when I know Aramaic a little bit better, like at all. Um, in this one, I'm going to do each speech form as I encounter it. So this is my first time encountering a uh, uh, a noun in construct form. But it suddenly occurs to me, if I come back here, do they have a standardized code for these? Ah, they do. Well, I don't think I need all that. I certainly don't need the Hebrew. I do need the Hebrew. Hebrew noun, common, masculine, singular, construct. They have a standard code. We're going to cheat and use their standard code. Hebrew noun, common, masculine, singular, construct. And then just because you want people to understand what you mean, we're going to create uh, a version that is, or we're going to use a word that we can say, um, this is an example of this word in this form. Uh, because it's easier to do Hebrew on my phone than to do Hebrew on my computer. Hebrew noun, common, masculine, singular, construct. So the um, the Hebrew word that we are going to use is going to be melech, which is king, because it has a very clear feminine version, uh, Melika, of the queen, um, and it is unique in all of its different forms. Uh, I had one textbook that wanted to use Seuss, horse, as its example word for every single thing, and I in one way kind of understand the desire. Um, no, wait, king doesn't have a special form in construct. No, in construct form, king is the same. I'll come up with a sample word later. Um, I'll come up with a sample word next time. We'll figure that out. And so the gloss regular expression is what this is most commonly going to translate as. Um, and over here, you have your forms, and these are $1, $2, $3, and $4. And so the construct form will be $1 of. That'll be the most basic way to translate that. And so over here, once, two, why isn't it pulling it in? Speech B. Because somehow this ended up at the wrong range. B2. Apply to all. There we go. And that is something to watch, is sometimes you may end up with a case where when you're moving things around, something points to a wrong spot. If that happens, reach out to me on Facebook and give me access to your file, and I will let you know where I think something went wrong, and we can work it out together. So anyway, we do this. And this again is pulling from a weird 234 on the speech. That'll fix it. There we go. And so then from there, we come back, we make sure, as we've gone down, we've made sure everything's good there. We come up here to our translation. I had a little bit of a software glitch. Sorry about that, but I got back to where I was. So now that we've got everything entered in the other fields correctly, we'll enter that we have morpheme number 1, and that'll bring all this across. When we make the choice, we'll have the option of having more than one possible word in here. And we'll be choosing that. In this case, there is only one there, so the only choice possible is 1. We can override this, and we probably will, but not right now. As we come down here, we are setting the paragraph of the first word. We're setting the first word to be a centered, extra large version of the word to match the formatting of the Lisborn Bible. We have an option of adding a divider before and a divider after, and an additional word before and an additional word after. The reason why you may want to do that will become apparent for the dividers very soon. The additions, sometimes some languages are very efficient with their language, and you end up having to add words that aren't there to make the same meaning. The most obvious example between Hebrew and English is Hebrew doesn't always have the to be verb when you're making a stative uh, statement. It's usually very clear, and there are ways in the grammar to make it extra clear, even without having that verb there. But, you know, ha'itz gadol would mean the tree is big, whereas ha'itz hagadol would mean the big tree. Um, you've still got eats and gadol as the only words there. There's no is verb, but the is verb is implied by the grammar. And so you end up adding is a lot. And then sometimes there are other ways where the language is just more efficient. And sometimes there's kind of a sense that you're reading it and you go, this is saying more than just what the words are saying, and you want to add an extra emphasis word or something to kind of, sometimes we do that in English too. The difference between big and huge is that one has more emphasis to it. And so if we were translating that into another language, there might be some times where we translate them as the same word, and then there might be some times where we add an extra emphasis when it says huge, just based on our personal preferences where that's going on. That's not going to be a case on this particular word, though. So the vision of, because this is the beginning of a sentence, we need to capitalize it. Capitalization first. And then so we have the, now all of this stuff, somehow I added that. That does not go there. All of this stuff towards the right-hand side is automatically generated, and I have it all automatically generate so that it will make other processes run faster. When you're building bigger books than Obadiah, some of this can go kind of slow. But if you break it out, each word only has to be done once. That's the way spreadsheets work, is it only calculates these things when you have to. And so, when you do this, it ends up calculating, just that verse and then just that text. And then on some of the other sheets, it does end up calculating the whole file, but it takes it a while to do that in the background. And you can kind of move on and do other things while it's doing that in the background. Margin text, we won't have any, we may have one or two in Obadiah, but sometimes as a translator, you want to say, actually this says this, but literally it means that, or I'm translating this word in this special way this time because I think this. And sometimes you have a theological thing you want to say. You want to say, oh, hey, look at this. This talks about this theological point that is my personal pet peeve. And, whatever thing that everybody else believes can't possibly be true because here we are. And this is where you add that, is in the margin text. We're not going to have a lot of margin text in the corrected King James, but we will have some. All right, so then we move on to the next word. We enter one to see if we've got it, and sure enough, we pop up with a, any minute now. Well, we know that it's going to pop up with a NA because we have not processed that word yet. So we're going to grab our morpheme and come over here. And we're going to go to our morphemes, and that's there. Roots, that is there. And then because we're going to be consistent, we're going to come grab our root from here, but I happen to know that in this case, the root is not any different. We're going to say 1, and it's going to say an A, which tells us that we've got to do something here. The word is this. Part of speech. Again, I am going to say noun, because I know where we're going. I'm going to put a semicolon, and I'm going to say proper, and I'm going to say person. And we're going to come over here, and we're going to see what it means. It means Obadiah. And it's translated 20 times as Obadiah. And once again, we have the same thing, Obadiah. Obadiah. Is it Obadiah or Obadiah? Let me make sure I spell it right. Obadiah. And if there were 2 of them, they would be Obadiahs. And Obadiahs. And Obadiahs. And then we are going to grab our Strong's definition because we are cheaters and proud of it. All right. Roots. Let's see. Speech form. You're going to come back here. And you're going to say Hebrew noun, proper name. Proper name. And in that case, just $1 is going to be what we get. Come back over here. Oops, I'm missing something. Why isn't that growing? Oops. Oh, because I did not say proper name. Ta-da! The vision of Obadiah is going to be on its own line. We're going to start a new paragraph so that vision of can be on its own. I'm going to leave it like it is, but if I were 4% more picky, which I'm not, obviously, but if I were, I would want to put some extra work into having just vision be on its own line and then put of Obadiah in its own case. I'm going to show you how we would do that if we wanted to do that. We would come to our speech override and we would go $1 of $1. And then over here, that's how we would do that. We're not going to do that. Not because it's hard. I mean, literally, did you see how easy it is? But because we are trying to, in this particular case, keep things as clean as we can because it's for demonstration purposes only. We want people to look at this and go, that's kind of wonky. I can do better. And then we want them to go do better. That's my goal, is that you will look at this and go, that's kind of wonky. I can do better. Please go do better. That's what I want. And you're not going to do that if I do it all right, if I do it all perfect the first time through, which I'm not the kind of person to do it all perfect the first time through anyway. So we're going to go We don't need to wait for it to populate because we know there's no such word there. Morpheme. Again, I happen to know that it's not any different, but we're trying to pretend like we don't know anything. We're also pretending that I looked through 5 different dictionaries. Da-da-da. Dictionary. Co. Here. Okay, so here we have lots of different words that co can come into English as. Enough that we're just going to copy and paste because that's the kind of translation this is, and that's the kind of people we are. But we can't just copy and paste because the software doesn't work like that. We need to separate these with semicolons. In all of your semicolons and your vertical bars, do not have any spaces. It will mess it up. That was the one thing that I didn't like about the way I had things working, is I need there to be no spaces between the semicolons, and I tried a couple of different ways to make it work, and I still 100% believe that if I did not care how fast the software ran, I would absolutely be willing to do this, or be able to do that. But all the ways that I have that worked slowed everything down to a crawl, and I just could not bring myself to it. And so it is what it is. That's part of the reason that it's open source, is so that you, dear viewer, who happen to be really good at Google Sheets, can go, I think I can do it without slowing everything down to a crawl, and fix it and make it better, and then message me on Facebook and go, I'm better than you. And I can go, yes, you are, and tell you how awesome you are, and steal your code. So then we go to our Strong's definition, and we swipe. Swiper, no swiping. Swiper, yes swiping. And then so for part of speech, what are they calling it? Adverb? I guess that works. Adverb. Speech. Adverb. $1. Usually our adverb is just going to be whatever it is. And what have I got? Adverb. That's right. Roots. Adverb. All right. So as we go, periodically, we're going to want to sort these somehow. One of the things that I don't like about the way that they have this, and I do it different in my own, is if I sort these, I am not going to end up with things that are most common together all the time. But they'll be close enough to be close enough. So we're going to sort range, we are going to sort by column B, and you'll see that that doesn't ruin anything. These are still all working just fine. And of course, it doesn't matter right now because there's only 3. But we're going to get in the habit of doing that because we're going to need to find them. So what is this in King James? Thus. Okay, so that is coming in as thus. Nothing special about any of these words except the vision of Obadiah is its own sentence. So we're going to put a period as a divider. We're going to say that there's a space after that. You also have to say if there's going to be a space. This one, the divider before, the divider after will read an underscore as a space. In other places where I have the divider, it won't do that. We can talk about that in more detail over a Facebook message if you get into it. Again, the reason was every single one that I add the ability to tell that it's a space, that the underscore becomes a space, everyone slowed it down a little bit. And I got to a point where I just said which ones are worth it and which ones are not. And this one is worth it. Some of the others are not. And again, you are welcome, dear viewer, who is better at Google Sheets than I am, to come in and do better and laugh at me and tell me how much better I am, and I will humbly submit that you are better and then steal your code. So thus, and again, we could wait for this to populate if we weren't sure if it was there, but we're sure. Morpheme. And this is a unique case where the dictionary version of it is exactly the same as the root entry. That doesn't happen real often. That's the reason we have with verbs anyway. Part of speech, verb, cow. Okay, and so this is where we are going to start having a little more fun. And this is where having a tool to do this for you is actually going to be helpful. I'm going to do it in Notepad because I have all kinds of code in Notepad. Apparently, that I'm still working on. But that's a project for another day. Amar has a whole bunch of things that can come into English as just for the present tense version. It can be say, it can be speak, it can be answer, it can be command, it can be tell, it can be call, it can be promise. And then, as you can see, it has a whole bunch of miscellaneous other things. You can kind of scroll through and see if you run into any more. say or said is kind of going to be the most common. Um, and so for each one of these, you need all the different versions that it can come into English as. So I am going to, there is a form of verb called the V5. And I'm going to say V1, V2, V3, V4, V5 to bring up an example. And I have never seen a standardized, every third uh, tool that I have ever used gives these a different name. But the base form is just what we think of as the present tense form. To say, and then we said, and there's the ing form and the s form. Tell. I'll do that when we get there. Now, because we are also doing Elizabethan English, saith, saith, say, est. Is that right? Let's ask Google. Say. Yep, that's right. See, I can do it right sometimes. And that's the third person and the second person form. And then when you know what they are, spoke. You know what? I'm going to see. Yeah, there we go. When you see them, it makes sense. Speaking, speaks, speaketh, speakest. Answer, answered, answered, answering, answers, answer, eth, answer, est. Commanded, commanded, commanding, how did I miss that twice? Commands. That's right. Command eth, command est. Told, told, telling, tells, tell, eth, tell, est. Call, called, calling, calleth, callest, promise, promised, promising, promise is, promise, promised, est. And most of the time, V2 and V3 are the same. But spoke and spoken, he spoke, he was spoken. But most of the time, in most English words, those come out to the same thing. He promised, he was promised. And the verb form makes all the difference. You want to separate the same with the vertical bars, and then you want to separate the ones that are different with a semicolon, and then you put it all on one line. And you'll see that it automatically, why does it want to do that? There we go. You'll see that it automatically separates out the first version of each one of the sets separated by bars. And so we come back to roots, Amar. Let's see what verb form they give it. Hebrew verb, cal, perfect, katal, third person, masculine, singular. Form. All right, we are just about at the end of our hour anyway, so we're going to finish this up. Apparently, the software I am trying today only lets me do a half hour. So, I'm going to try it a different way next time I do this. Anyway, the Hebrew katal, we're just going to finish up. We're not going to finish verse 1 today. We are just going to finish up this word, and we're going to call that good for today. So the kal, perfect, third person, masculine. We are going to come over here. We're going to say that is most of the time going to be the past tense, the third person past tense. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in that list. $6. And because we are doing things a little different, we are going to add the emojis that tell us that these are, in fact, what they are. We're going to do that on my phone because adding an emoji on my phone is easy. And adding an emoji on the computer is hard. At least I'm going to do first one on my phone. Proper nouns are not necessarily masculine or feminine, but this is the masculine form of this verb. So I am going to add that. And then our dictionary. I'll do the super honest and thoroughly verified thing of copying and pasting the one thing we know is out of date and could be replaced with better resources. There we go. There we go. Hebrew cowl perfect. There we go. Thus saith that's where we're going to end for today. Means we didn't get all the way through verse 1, but we're getting a lot of stuff built. And I am going to, like I said, I have one for modern English, and the nouns are the same. Offline, I am going to create a new, improved version of this for Elizabethan English that's going to have the second and third person in there, so that next time when we get to the next verbs, anyway, when we get to the next verbs, it'll be a lot easier to build. So for now, thank you very much for paying attention, and we'll get the rest of Obadiah 1 done. At this rate, it'll probably take us 3 or 4 more episodes to get through the end of Obadiah 1, but that's okay. We're in